Hello, everybody. Welcome. How was your evening or your day or whatever? The white paper to show that all. Let me get this going here. Okay. Tonight, we're. God, my hair looks horrible. I need to cut my hair. Oh. Oh. Sorry. Wow. Talking offline and crappy. Well, hope it gets better. So, we're going to get right into this for today. And I have chosen from our bookie book, which doesn't show up, a stitch called the iris stitch. And this is what the iris stitch looks like. Get it in frame. Get a little more light. It's very lacy looking. Almost like a shell stitch. Like a scallop stitch. But different. This is super, super, super easy to make. So that's what we're going to get into today. Nor fairy. So what we're going to do this stitch, you need to do a multiple of 4 plus 3 chains. Move that out of the way. Get my setup again. So I'm going to do 16. A Grammy. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that's our 16 chains. And then we do 3 additional chains. 1, 2, 3. Now what we're going to do is our 5th chain from the hook. 1. Might have to zoom in. You know, I'm still getting these controls. Oh, that's a little too much. So we're going to go to the 5th chain from the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And in that 5th chain, we're going to do 2 double crochets. So there's 1. We're going to do our 2nd double crochet in that same chain. So 2 double crochets in the 5th from the hook. We're going to chain 1. And then still in that exact same chain from the foundation, do 2 more double crochets. Let's do the last double crochet. So we've done our chain. Again, multiple 4, 3 additional. And then the 5th chain from the hook, we'll do 2 double crochets, a chain, and 2 double crochets, all in that same foundation chain. Then we're going to skip on the foundation chain, skip 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, and in the 4th chain, let me double check, 1, 2, 3, 4. In the 4th chain, we're going to do the exact same thing. So in the 4th chain, we'll do 2 double crochets, so there's our 1, and our 2nd. Extra slack. So we've done our 2nd, we're going to chain 1, and in that same foundation chain, do 2 more double crochets. So we've got two clusters so far. Again, we're going to skip the next 3 chains. 1, 2, 3. And in that fourth one, do 2 double crochets. There's our 2 double crochet. Chain 1, and then 2 more in that same chain from the foundation. Okay. Oh, did I count wrong? Wait a minute. Whoa, hold up. Wait a minute. My sample, I did it okay. I counted wrong. Okay, well, early on, let's start over. It'll be a good review. So again, multiples of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then 3 more. 2, 3. Now the 5th chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is. It's filling up time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5th chain. Do 2 doubles. We do our 2 doubles, 1 chain, and then 2 more doubles. If you need me to repeat anything so far, multiple 4 in our chain, 3 extra. 5th chain from the hook, do 2 double, 1 chain, and then 2 more double, all on that same 5th chain. I'm going to do the next one. Again, if I need to go slow, let me know. So then we skip the next 3 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3. And in the 4th one, two double crochets, chain 1, and 2 more double crochets, all in that same foundation chain. Okay, same thing. Yeah, once you get the first row, actually stitching into the foundation, once you get that, the rest of it, it's real simple. It's setting your first row is the tricky part. So the way I stitch it, mine's a little tight, but I have a chain here. That's what I was doing. I was not counting that little chain, and putting all of those stitches in the chain next to it. That's here, kind of bunches everything up. So we're going to skip 3. 1, 2, 3, and in the 4th one, do that exact same cluster. Why is it sorcery? So there's our 2 double crochet in that chain, chain 1, and then 2 more. And again, I can always slow down. Oh, I got to get it in the frame. So basically, between each cluster, this little fan shape, there are 3 chains on the foundation. 1, 2, 3, and in that 4th chain, do 2 double crochets, Well, this is kind of related to a scallop stitch, and I think there's a couple other stitches. So again, in that fourth chain from your previous cluster, so our previous cluster's here, skip 3. In the fourth, do 2 doubles, 1 chain, and 2 more doubles. 1, 2. The counting part is really critical here in the beginning. Yes, they are. So at the very end, after you've done, when you get to the end, you should have 2 chains here. And you can kind of see the 2 chains. You're going to skip the first chain, and in the second chain, which is the very last chain, you're going to do a double crochet. So you know, if you got it right, that when you, however long you make this, at the end, if you only have 2 chains left over, you've counted right. So in that very last chain, we're doing a double crochet. So to recap, multiples of 4, 3 extra chains, the 5th from the hook, 2 doubles, a chain, and 2 doubles, skip 3, and in the 4th one do that same cluster, 2 doubles, a chain, 2 doubles. Continue all the way along. See here it kind of curves. That happens a lot with this pattern. I didn't do it this time, but if that is a problem for you, I've heard that if you use just for the foundation chain, if you go up one size hook, like this is a 5.5 millimeter, if you go up to a 6 millimeter hook, just to do the chain, once you've done your 16, your multiples of 4 plus your 3, change out the hook to the other size. That could help because you need a little extra. That might have been my issue also. So now, that is our first row. Now you're going to chain 3 and turn. For some reason my camera's, that's off a little bit. It's in a weird position. Let me see. Oh, that might be better. So the end of the row, you chain 3 and flip. So now, the only thing you really have to pay attention to are these, see these bumps, these tops of these scallops? And if you look carefully, there's the chain space from that one, there's a chain space from this one, chain space, and the chain space. You're only looking at the chain spaces. So you immediately go to that first chain space. You forget about any of these double crochets. And you, in that chain space, you do 2 double crochets, 1 chain, and 2 double crochets. So the exact same cluster, instead of going into a chain from your foundation, you're doing it in the top of the previous row's fan cluster. So you've done your cluster, and then you go to the next one. You don't do any chains, you don't do any other stitches. In the top of the next cluster, in that chain space, 2 double crochets, 1 chain, and 2 more double crochets. This is the pattern. So in the next one, you keep going into the chain space of the next cluster, 2 doubles, chain 1, and then 2 more doubles. Like I said, getting that first row done is the difficult part. Now we're to our last cluster, 2 double crochets, 1 chain, and 2 more doubles. Gotta check one more thing, check my notes. Okay. Then when you get to the end here, this is the end of my row. It kind of curves a bit. But this very far end, there's like these couple chains here. You're going to do a double crochet in the top of that chain. So you don't do it in the top of these 2 doubles here from this previous cluster. It's from those chains on the end. So you do 1 double crochet at the very end. And then what that does is it forms a space here and it finishes the edge. So now the next row you continue with that. That's all the pattern. So you chain 3, flip our work, and then you just find that hole, not the hole in between the clusters, the hole in the middle of each cluster, and you do 2 double, a chain, and 2 double. And I only did 1 double there. There's a similar stitch, I forgot what it's called, where you do 1 double, 2 chains, and 1 double. I think it's called the V stitch. This is 2 doubles, 1 chain, 2 doubles into each space. Like this example here, it looks more complicated than that. But it's super, super simple. And I can see if this was done with a lighter weight yarn, it would be very lacy and would drape a lot. So again, I did that cluster real quick. I'll go slow. So you get the end of a cluster. You find the chain space, which is here where my finger's poking through. Double crochet twice. Chain 1, and then again 2 more doubles. Does this make sense? So a double, double, chain, and then 2 more doubles. We're at the end. So on the top of this chain, this is the edge. The top of here, that top part of it, you'll do one double crochet. Sometimes getting into that chain on the end is a little tighter. We're going to do this a couple more rows before we get into our second stitch of the evening, because the second one we're going to do, it's more involved, and I'm going to need more time for that one because that one's confusing. This is the easy one. So again, we're at the end of the row, chain 3, flip, find the top. Yeah, I hate working into the chain also. I don't know. It may work with this pattern Some patterns I have found that if I just do all single crochets into the chain and then afterwards do the pattern, sometimes that works. I don't know if this would work in this with this pattern because it's easier to stitch into a single crochet than it is into the chain. I even hate doing single crochets and chains. That I hate doing that, but it's kind of where you have to start. That's a lot of things that blankets and projects that I've come up with. I was like, you know what? I might want to follow a specific pattern, but just to get it done and over with, just do singles all in the chain and then go from there. Just so I have something to start with. So again, we've chained 3, we flipped in the top of that cluster, 2 doubles, 1 chain, and 2 doubles. There's no counting stitches, there's no looking into, oh, is this the right stitch? I like these patterns where you work in the chain stitches. Kind of like a granny square, where you work in the chain stitch. You don't actually work in the chain, or, not the chain stitch, where you work in the chain space. Not into the chain or into a specific stitch. So there was our single crochet, our chain. I think I would learn the names of the stitches, and then you do 2 doubles. Oops. I can see this looking really cool looking is if you did this in a very slow transition variegated yarn, one that doesn't repeat real fast, one that has a slow transition. I think that would look pretty. Top of the next cluster, do 2 doubles. Okay, good night. Two doubles, a chain, and then 2 more doubles. And then the same thing at the end. We're going to do 2 doubles, a chain, and 2 more doubles. When you get to the end of the row, you do a double crochet into the top of that chain stitch on the edge. Those turning chains. That's the iris stitch. I guess if you kind of look at it, I don't know how well I'm going to show. It kind of almost looks like the flower of an like iris, like here, and then you got the top part and maybe parts on the bottom, kind of, I guess, if you use your imagination. So that's that one. And I'm going to clip my yarn. We are going to do the Tunisian ocean stitch. This is a very complex stitch, so if I lose anybody, I can understand. This is Tunisian ocean. It makes a very dense fabric. That's the right side. Oh, with the iris stitch, it looks the same as it does on both sides. With the Tunisian ocean stitch, just like most Tunisian stitches, there's a right side and a wrong side. That's the right side, and that's what the back looks like. It makes a very dense piece of fabric. And this is going to take a little while to explain. So, you're going to do a multiple of 10 stitches plus 2. So, got our Tunisian hook. Do a slip knot, put it on the hook. And we're going to do multiples of 10. 10 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're going to do 20. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So multiple of 10 plus 2. Okay? And again, with Tunisian crochet, you've got your forward pass and then your return pass. So our forward pass, the second chain from the loop, we're going to pull up a loop into it. So not the first one, but the second one. So you're going to pull up a loop, leave it on there. And you're going to do that for every chain. You're just going in, yarning over, bringing it through, and leaving it on the hook. And again, working into a chain is a pain, but at least with this, you're just going in and yarning over and bringing it through. You're not doing any fancy stitch into the actual chain. That is a plus of Tunisian. You don't have to worry too much of that. And if this isn't showing up on camera, let me know and I can do some adjustments. We're doing the whole thing all the way down into the very last stitch. I'm not going to count these, but whatever number of chains that you had, that's how many stitches you're going to have on your Tunisian hook. Now for the return pass, you're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops on the hook. Okay? So we've yarned over and pulled through the first 2. Now we're going to chain 2. Chain 1, chain 2. Okay? Now we're going to yarn over one more, bring it through that first chain, and then through the next 3 that are on the hook. That's our repeat. So again, we're going to chain 2, chain 1 more, and then bring it through the next 3 on the hook. And what we're making are these tiny little clusters, these little shell clusters that have 3 in each. And in between those little clusters, you're going to have a chain of 3. I know it might be difficult to see this. I don't know if that might help. So now we're going to chain 2, chain 1 more, and then pull that loop through the next 3 loops that are on the hook. Again, chain 2, chain another one, and then pull that loop through the next 3. Keep doing this until you get to, you'll end up having 3 loops. I think you're going to have 3 loops on the hook at the end. So we have 2 chains, 1 more chain, and then continue and bring it through the next 3. Chain 2, chain 1 more, then bring it through the next 3. Now we have 3 on the hook. We're going to chain our 2. We still have 3 on the hook. Now we're going to yarn over and bring it chain and then through the last 2 stitches. So that is our first row of this stitch. Row 2, our forward pass, we're going to chain 1, and this is where it gets tricky. Here, between my thumbs, and I don't know how well it's going to see, you've got a half of a shell. We're going to call these little shells. They're going to hang at the bottom. And then you have 3 chains and a big old chain space, and then you have another shell and another chain, and so on. The instructions say to insert the hook into the very first chain, which is here. So you're going to skip this half shell and you're going to insert in there. That's kind of difficult. So what I just do is I modify it. I go into the chain space, bring up a hook, a loop, and leave it on the loop. Then down at the bottom on the foundation chain, between these 2 little shell clusters, a shell cluster here and a shell cluster here, in between my thumbs, there's a chain. Kind of see that moving. You're going to go in and go through that chain, and then on the back side, so I've gone in through the front side through that chain, and then we're going to yarn over, bring it through, and now we have 2 on the hook. I mean 3 on the hook. We have our original loop. This was what had been looped under that little chain section. This was looped from the foundation chain. And then the next one, this chain section between these 2 little shells, there's actually 3 chains. That very last chain, we're going to go into it. So we're going to go in there, yarn over, and bring it through. So we have our original loop, and then we just made this little cluster of 3. I'll explain that again. So we're going to skip our cluster, our little shell cluster here, and in this chain space, we're going to go into the chain space, bring it up, bring up a loop. Then down from our original foundation chain on the bottom, we're going to pick up that loop, we'll go through that chain, pick up a loop, and bring it up. And then in this chain that's here on the top that we did on the forward pass, on the return pass, there's a section of 3. You're going to go into that chain next to this cluster. And I know this might sound very confusing because this is a very complex stitch. So if I'm losing anybody, I totally understand. So we're going to skip the next shell or cluster, whatever you want to call this. It's a cluster of 3 stitches. You're going to go into the chain space, or if you can, into that chain. I can't. So we go to the chain space, pick up a loop, and then in the bottom foundation chain, go through that foundation chain, pick up a loop, and bring it through that chain. And then right next to this cluster, see this little cluster here? To the right of it, there is a chain right there. you're going to go into that chain and bring up a loop. So the best way I look at it, we have our starting chain and we got our cluster of 3. We have 3 little here, we have clusters of 3 loops, and all of those are in between. See if I can show this. These little clusters are going to be in between the clusters from the previous row. So they're all being worked in this vicinity of this chain space, if that kind of makes sense. So now go into the chain space, yarn over, bring it up, bring a loop up, and now we're going to work into the foundation chain, bring a loop up, and now we're going to work into the chain, the upper chain, the very last stitch in that little segment. And we're going to work our way to the end. So again, each time we're skipping this little cluster, bring up a loop, and then that's in the chain space. Now in the foundation chain, go in, bring up a loop, and back through. And then in this little 3 chain segment, again, I think my lighting is not really working with this color yarn. I think I should have picked a different yarn. And if this color yarn is not really showing up for anybody, let me know, and I can always, let me know now, and you can always switch a yarn color. So now we go into this next cluster, not cluster, we skip the next cluster. In this chain space here, go in, pull up the loop. So we got 1. Now we're going to go into the foundation chain in between those 2 shell clusters, bring up a loop. And now we're going to work for our 3rd one, that last chain in that segment. So we've done, if you kind of, spread out this, you kind of got little clusters. They're separated. You got groups of 3. We have 1 more space here. Go in, bring it up. Now we're going to go into the foundation chain, bring up that loop, and now the last chain in that tiny little cluster of 3, bring it up. And then, hold on. At the very end here, and it's kind of difficult to see, we've got a half shell. There's only 2 little pieces here. And in the top of that half shell, we're going to insert the hook. And this is the difficult part. Insert it in there, however you can get it in. Loop over and bring it through. So before we do the return pass on the 2nd row, what are you laughing at? Okay, I'm gonna space this out. So here on the end we have our original loop. Then we're gonna have groups of 3, and that will determine however many groups will determine how long you have it, obviously. So you have 1 on the hook, and then these 3 are close to each other because they're in between the shell clusters from the previous row. So you have all your clusters, and at the very end, you're going to have 1 on the hook. So they're kind of like bookends. You're going to have 1 that's going to outline. Now for a return pass, I gotta look at my okay. So you're gonna yarn over and pull through the first loop on the hook, and then you're gonna chain one. So it's essentially 2 chains there. Now we're gonna yarn over, pull through that loop, and then the next 3. So it's kind of like what we did on the previous return pass. It really won't look like something until we get the 3rd and 4th rows of this pattern done, and it'll start to take form. Getting the first couple of rows is how you establish it. So now we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, chain 1 more, and bring that loop that's on your hook through the next 3. Okay? Chain 2, chain a 3rd one, and then bring that loop through the next 3 loops that are on your hook. Again, chain 2, chain a 3rd, bring that through all 3. Continue this until we have 5 loops on our hook at the end. So chain 2, chain an extra one, and then through the next 3, chain 2, chain an extra, and then bring it through the next 3, chain 2, chain an extra, and now, since we've got 5 loops on the hook, bring it through the first one. We'll finish that chain. So essentially, you got 3 chains, and then you're going to bring it through the next 3. You'll end up having 2 on your hook. Then you're going to chain, basically yarn over, and bring it through the last 2 stitches. Again, this looks like nothing right now. It'll start when we add the next couple rows. So row 3 and 4 is where it's at. It is very complicated because every other row is alternating of what you do, because when you do it, these little clusters or seashells, they're offset. So from one row to the next, they alternate back and forth, like side to side. They're not all lined up on top of each other. They interlock with each row. So row 3, we're going to chain 1. We're going to skip this vertical bar here on the right. And then in the next chain, which is right here between the vertical bar and our little seashell cluster, it's right here. You're going to go into that chain and bring up a loop. Now, the pattern is kind of the same. The beginning and ending is where it's different. So we've got a chain space here, so you're going to go in, bring up a loop. And now at the top of this, from this chain below, so there's a row of there's a row of shells here, and there's a row of shells here. So on the row directly below this loop, this little, not loop, mini chain, my words are not working tonight. You're going to go into the top of that little shell cluster. There's a little loop, believe it or not, you really probably can't see it, but there's a loop in there. And that's the downward one, because when you make these little shells, the middle one is a little bit longer than the other. So we've done that, and now the last chain in this little cluster here, go in there and pick it up. So now we have cluster of 3. This row, you've got two loops and then a cluster of 3, and then we're going to keep doing the clusters of 3. So again, we're going to move over to the next chain space, bring up a loop, and then we're going to go into the top of the chain from the previous row, and trying to find that loop. Even I'm having difficulty. It helps if you can stitch loose. So I was able to catch it on there. And then the last one is the last chain of that little segment. So again, now we're going to have 2 on the end, and then our clusters of 3. So the previous row, on each end you'd have 1 loop and clusters of 3. This row we have 2 on each end. Bring up the loop. This is not a fast working fabric. So we go in and picked up a loop into that chain from the previous row. And then we're going to go into the last chain of that cluster and bring it up. So we've got 1 cluster of 3, another cluster of 3, and a third. And we're going to keep working until we get to the end. Bring up the loop. Go into the top of the shell from the row below. Pick that up. And then the last chain in that little 3 cluster span to finish our little grouping of 3 stitches. And that's what we're going to do till we get to the end. I want to go a little bit faster for this part here, so then you'll be able to see how the fabric is going to really take shape. So now we still have 1 section here to put our grouping of 3 loops. So 1, and then go in and try to get that into that loop, and then into the third. Okay. Let me check one thing. Gotta look at something. Okay, we're at the end here. And what we are going to need to do, skip the shell, pull loop up in the next. Okay. Now in this last space, here at the very end, we've kind of got a half shell. So we've got a chain space here, because we had a little a shell here. And again, I should have picked a different color yarn. Got a shell here, and then a half shell here. In this space here in between, we're going to go in and grab a loop, and then we're going to go into the top of the vertical bar, or that half shell, all the way on the edge of your fabric, and go in and just pick up another loop. And this, I'm going to stop here and I'll show what we have. The loops on the hook, we've got 2 loops on the hook here, and then we've got clusters of 3, and then 2 on the end. Now, for the return pass, we're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops on the hook, like we just did. Chain 2, chain a third, and then pull that loop that's on the hook through the next 3 loops. Doing that, pulling it through those 3 loops, creates a shell. Hi DJ, elbow. Welcome. So now we're going to chain, again, chain 2, chain a third. Okay, welcome DJ. So we've chained 3, and then we're going to pull it through the next 3 on that are on the hook. Continue this until we have 3 left on the hook. So chain 2, actually it's chain 3 I should say. Chain 3 and then pull through the next 3. This part is the easy part. The return passes is pretty much the same except for the ends. Chain 3 and then bring that loop through the next 3. Keep going. Chain 3. And this, we're working on the 3rd row, and it's starting to take shape. You really won't see it until we get on the 4th row, and even then we're still going to need to do more. So that was our 3 chains, and then that loop we're going to pull through the next 3 stitches, and then we're going to chain 3 more, and now we have 3 on the hook. Bring that loop that's on the hook through those 2. So I'm going to flatten it out a little bit. You can kind of see the pattern starting. You've got a shell here, beginnings of a shell here, here, here. The first row, you kind of see it. It kind of gets lost. But you could start seeing how it's gonna form. Row 4, we're going to chain. We're skipping this half shell, which this here is a half shell. And in this chain space, go in, bring up a loop, and then you're going to bring up a loop in the top of the shell from below. And then bring up a loop in the last chain of that small little cluster between the shells. And now we've got our first one on the hook, and then we got our grouping of 3, where we're going to repeat that. So this row will have all... Yes, Tunisian, you do not turn your work. Tunisian is kind of like... How do I explain it? Well, if you're right, it doesn't matter if you're right or left-handed. I'm right-handed, so I go right and then left, right and left, right and left. There's no only to the right, flip, only to the right. You go back and forth. Because your entire row, you're going to end up, as we get to the end here, you're going to have all these loops on your hook. So that's your forward pass, and then a return pass, you're taking them off. This here is just one example of Tunisian stitch. This is a very complicated Tunisian stitch. It's not the basic, oh, go ahead and try it. What I would recommend, not starting with this stitch, what I can recommend is if you look down below in the description of my stream, I have a link for my YouTube channel. On the YouTube channel, the other week, I can't remember what week it was. It might have been it could have been this past Saturday. Could have been last Saturday. I did the basic Tunisian stitch. That is real simple. It's nothing like this. This here is advanced level Tunisian stitch. But yeah, I'd say give it a try. Give it a look. The problem is, and if you all stay tuned, and if you look at my schedule below, you'll notice on the schedule for the Saturday, oh, thank you. If you look in the schedule for Saturday, I'm going to show how to do basic, simple Tunisian stitch, but for a wide piece of fabric. Because, let me zoom out. The hook is only so far, and the entire row, you're going to put your loops on the hook. Well, you can't really do a full blanket on this. You can do it, you can piece it, you can do panels and piece it together, but there's a way, there's a couple different techniques that you can do it with some special tools that you'll be able to do a full blanket. Also, what I might start with on Saturday is a review of basic Tunisian crochet. So if you tune in Saturday at the same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, I can always do a quick review. Oh, and thank you for the follow. So back to this. So we've got one loop on our hook, and then we got our cluster of 3. So again, to do this cluster of 3, we're working in this chain space. Go in, bring up a loop, and then from the row below, where my thumb is, in that shell, you're going to go in and get that loop on the top of that loop of that shell, yarn over and bring it through, and then you're going to go into the last chain of this mini little section of chain here. Again, this I can totally understand if I'm losing everybody with this. It took me a little while to learn how to do this the other day, but it does make a very dense, and I'll show it again, a very pretty and dense fabric. I think, and I don't really know how you would do this in increasing and decreasing, but I've read and I could understand this would make a really good fabric for a hat because it's dense and thermal. So that's the front side. It's called the ocean stitch. It looks like little seashells. And if you flip it on the back, that's the back. So the back isn't as pretty. And that's how a lot of Tunisian crochet is. A lot of it will have a right and a wrong side. So again, in our next chain space, go in, pull up a loop. That's the easy one. And in the next thing we're going to do, from the shell from the row below, we're going to go into the loop of the top of that shell, which is right here. And then yarn over and bring it through. And then you're going to go into the last, I'm trying to show this as best I can. There's 3 chains here. The very last chain before you get to this shell. So that very last chain, you're going to go into and bring up a loop. I'm going to continue that to the end. Bring up a loop into the next chain space. Go down into the top of the shell from the row below. Yarn and bring up a loop. And then in the last chain of that little, can't even see it, in that little segment, go in and bring it up. So each time you're adding more loops to your hook. I kind of describe Tunisian crochet, any type of Tunisian crochet, it's almost like a combination of crochet and knitting, even though you're not transferring them needle to needle, but you end up having loops on your needle like you would with knitting. So you go in, bring up a loop, and then from the shell, the row below, the shell, top of the shell, you pick up the loop, yarn over and bring it through. So we have 2 on the hook. And now we're going to go into that last chain from that little segment that we had there and bring it up. Well, that's a little tight, but that's fine. A couple more of these little clusters I'm going to make. And this is row 4. And row 3 and 4 is after I get done row 4, which I haven't done the return pass yet. You're going to repeat 3 and 4. So now we have our last little cluster to do because we're at the end here. So we're going to do the same thing, pick up a loop in there, and then we're going to go into the top loop from the row below. And I'm hoping this is coming across somewhat understandable. And then I'm going to finish it by going into that, the last chain of that little segment there. And now we have got, I got to double check something. Okay. Now at the end here, we've got right here, these two little stitches here is a half a shell. We're going to go on the top of that half shell and pull up a loop. And the end stitches are always the difficult ones to go through. So now we're going to stop, and I'm just going to repeat and show. Starting at the end, you got one loop, and then you got your clusters of 3, because those clusters of 3 are going to form your shells. And at the end, you're going to have one loop. So on row 4, at the end of your forward pass, it'll look like this. At the end, on row 3, which is the previous row, at the end of your forward pass, it would look like this, but on the end, you'd have 2 loops on each end, if that makes sense. Because again, your shells are going to be all staggered. Now with this, you're going to yarn over and pull through one loop. This is our return pass. We're going to chain 1. We're actually going to chain another. And then we're going to bring that loop that's on the hook through the next 3. If I can get it through without snagging. So now we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then bring that loop through the next 3 loops that are on your hook. Again, chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then bring it through the next 3. Sometimes it's a little, my stitches are a little snug, so trying to get it through is a little difficult. So again, chain 3. And then bring that loop through the next 3. Chain 3. Bring that loop through the next 3. And so on. You're going to keep doing this until you get 5 loops on the hook. So we chained 1. And there's our second one and our third one. Bring it through 3. There are 5 loops on the hook right now. But in this, between these clusters, I am going to need that grouping of chains. So I got to do those 3 chains first. And then bring it through the next 3. And now we're going to chain 1 and bring it through the last 2. All Tunisian crochet is going to curl at some degree, but we're getting that pattern. It's starting to form. It looks a lot better when you got a whole bunch more rows done. So now we're repeating rows 3 and 4. So we just did row 4. Now row 3, we're going to chain, skip this vertical bar, and that chain that's between the vertical bar and our shell, we're going to bring up a loop through there. Pierce the chain the wrong way. So now we have 2 loops, and now we're going to move to this chain space. And now this is where we're going to bring up our shell groupings of 3 loops. Bring up 1, go to the row below and bring up one from that top of that shell, and then one from the last chain. Again, we got two on the hook, and then a grouping of 3 on the hook. And just continue to the end. Bring up 1. The next one you're going to bring up is from the top of the shell from below. And then you're going to go into the last chain and bring up a loop. I don't think this would be good for a blanket because it's very dense and it's going to, A, take a lot of yarn, and it's going to be very heavy. I could see if you did it in a cotton yarn, you could make like a hand towel or something, or like trimming to go on that you can apply to a hand towel if you use lightweight, like cotton, like crochet cotton, like the really thin stuff, like you to make doilies and that type of thing. But I don't think this would make a good blanket because it's very dense. So bring up 1, go into the top of the next, bring it, the top of this shell from the row below, and then we're going to go into the last chain of that grouping and bring it up. Again, it's a very complicated stitch. Promise you, Saturdays is not going to be as complicated. So, bring up the loop from in that chain space, and then from the row below, the top of that shell, go into that loop and bring up a loop, and then the last chain in that grouping, go through and bring up a loop. There at the end, bring up a loop, same thing, the top of the shell below, I can getting it to work when you're this far in is kind of difficult. Sometimes the yarn doesn't want to work with you. And then you're going to go into the last chain of that grouping. Now, you're near the end. You've got this tiny little space and this little vertical bar. So you're going to go into that space, bring up a loop, and then the top of this vertical bar, you're going to go into the top there and pull up a loop. So again, we're at the end of the row. 2 loops on the hook at the end, and then our groups of 3, and then 2 at the other end. So that's not how you know if you're going to do it right. The third, one row is going to have 2 on each end, and then the next row is going to have 1 on each end, and then it alternates back and forth. You're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and now we're going to chain 3, and then bring our loop through the next 3 on our hook, and then chain 3, bring the loop through the next 3 on the hook, and chain 3. Keep doing this until we get 3 loops on the hook at the end. So that was our chain 3. Bring it through the next 3, chain 3, bring it through the next 3, and so on. Chain 3, bring it through the next 3. The return passes are a whole lot easier to do. Bring it through the next 3. We still have to chain 3. And after you chain 3, you're going to bring that loop that's in the hook through the last 2. And I'm just trying to flatten it out so you can see how the pattern is taking shape. Row 4 again. You're going to chain 1, and then you're going to go into your clusters that are here in this chain space. Bring up a loop, go on the top of the shell from below, and then go in the last chain of that little grouping. Same thing. Bring up a loop in the next chain space, top of the shell from below, and then into the last chain of that chain grouping. And you continue. So once you learn the basic pattern for each row, it kind of makes sense. The hardest part is the ends. But it is very tedious and fiddly. But it does make a really cool looking pattern. Get that. I know it's kind of difficult to show on camera the tiny little stitches that I'm doing. It looks really good there when I pull the fabric out of how it's going to look. Now I got to the end, but I've got a half shell here. We're going to go in the top of that, because at the very beginning of the row we only had 1 loop. We want the number of loops on the beginning to match at the end. So we've got 3 here, so we need 1 more for the top of that. There we go. So again, before we do the return pass, 1 loop, and then our groupings of 3. Again, I started with 20 chains, so that makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It'll make 7 groups there, and I think 8 in the next row. So we're going to yarn all over, pull through 1 loop on the hook, and then we're going to chain 2, and then bring that loop through the next 3. Chain 3, bring that loop through the next 3. Continue this until we have 5 loops on the hook. Chain 3, bring through 3. Chain 3, bring through 3. That part goes fast because they're all lined up because they were on the hook already. Okay. We're going to bring that through the next 3. We have 2 on the hook. We're going to yarn over and bring it through the last 2. Let me do one more row. And this would actually technically be the same thing for row 3, regardless of how many rows you have, because you repeat 3 and 4 over and over again. So you chain 1, and we've got a vertical bar here, we got a space, and we got a shell. So that means we're going to go into this chain that's here in between the 2 and pull up a loop. That'll give our first 2 chains on the end. They're not part of a full cluster or full shell, because the full shells are formed in the chain space there, which we're forming now. We pulled up 1, go under, bring it up, and then we're going to get the last chain in that grouping. So that's our 2 on the end, and then this is our grouping of 3. Bring up 1, go from the chain shell below, and go and get the 3rd. Just work your way again all the way over. Anybody, those that are watching, how many people are completely lost? Do a couple more clusters. Loop. There. Got one more cluster to do. Bring it up the first one, then go into the shell from the row below, and then into the last chain. It is very complicated because it's not the same thing over and over and over. I mean, it is, but you have to. It's because they all interlock, and it's a dense fabric. So now we come to the end. We got a chain space here, and we got a half shell. So we're going to go into the chain space, pick up a loop. Because remember, the very beginning here, we had 2 chains. So we're going to match it. So now we picked up 1 loop, and now we're going to go into the top of this vertical bar that's on the edge. And I know she went to bed, but your wife did say that she wanted to see complex stitches. And this was also requested by Grammy. So this is kind of like a special stitch. So again, at the end of this row, which is the 3rd row, yeah. Well, the iris stitch, is she really? The iris stitch that I started with, she seemed a little complicated, but now can you see that the iris stitch is super easy compared to this? But again, the iris stitch, that's regular crochet. But it's easier because you're not going into all these different stitches and picking up, because you make a more lacier type material as compared to this, which is very dense. Yeah, you definitely would have to take your time doing this. This is not a quick whoop, 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 whip. You can't whip it up real quick. So now we have 2 on the hook, so you're gonna, I gotta double check. And true. And I had still refer to the instructions. Uh, Yarn over, pull through one hook. Wait, this is row through. Yarn over and pull through two. Okay, so we're gonna yarn over and pull through the two on the end, and now we're gonna chain three. One, two, three, and then pull through the next three. The return passes again are always easy. Yeah, I promise you, Saturday when I show in detail, and I briefly showed it the other night, but I'm really going to take my time Saturday and show the technique to do extra wide, simple Tunisian crochet. That one is not going to be as difficult as this. So again, chain three. Okay, I don't want all of the stitches on here to be super complicated. I want it to have a balance because I know everybody has different skill sets. Or to look at this and try to build your skill set up to make something like this. So we've chained three and then go through the next three. Again, chain three and go through the next three. Chain three and through the next three. So now we're going to chain three and then pull that through the next two. Oh, I've come to a knot in my yarn. Well, you know what? We're going to pretend this knot is not there. We're going to ignore it. So we don't have a shell here. We have a shell space. So first of all, regardless of what it is, we chain one. So we don't have a shell here. So we immediately go into making our three loop cluster into that shell space. We have our one loop on the hook. Bring up a loop. Go into the top of the shell from below. Bring up a loop. And go into the last chain of that grouping and bring up a loop. Bring up in the next chain space, bring up a loop, go into the top of the shell from below, bring up a loop, and then the last chain in that cluster and bring up a loop. So again, when we get to the end of when we finish all this, we'll have all our clusters of three, and on either end we'll have one additional loop. Bring up our loop. Thing, and then bring up our third one. So on all of them, in these clusters, the first and third one are going to be the same length. This middle one, since it has to go down to the shell from the row below, it's going to be slightly longer. That's what gives this shape to these little shell clusters. This also kind of almost looks like alligator skin almost, like the pattern that on the back of an alligator. Yay! um, the technique that I'm going to show Saturday, we'll use the double-ended crochet hooks. But I have some, and this is a side note for long, wide pieces, for wide pieces. I do have some plastic drinking straws that I can cut down, and these are basic boy brand hooks, and they fit in here perfectly. And that the video I sent you, Cinderella, with the jelly cord, or if you use like a plastic tubing or whatever, the plastic tubing might be a little big. This may, well, we might have to, the jelly cord may or may not fit in there. We'll have to play around with it. But I got a bunch of plastic straws. Okay. Mermaid scales. Is that better? Actually, you know what? It really actually looks more like mermaid scales. But yeah, Saturday I'll do that technique of the double-ended crochet hooks for the um, wider pieces for Tunisian. Did I say Sunday? I meant Saturday. But it's cool that you got Tunisian hooks that you can practice. Oh, oh, okay, okay, cool. Well, depending on how long they are, you might be able to do some extra wide projects. Cool. Yeah, I don't have any of the ones that are the extra long tails. Are you laughing because something that said long tail with a beat on the end? No, ignore fairy. Okay, I'm just going. Oops. Oh, okay, come on. Getting into that last stitch is not the easiest. Okay, again, end of the row. Oh, okay. One loop on the end, and then our groups of three, and then one on the other end. So now we're going to go through the first one. So that's one, and then two more. And then we're going to bring it through the next three on the hook. Yeah, I would suggest when you start with the Tunisian, like I suggested to DJ earlier, the video I had the other week, or other videos on the internet. You don't have to use my video. Um, do the simple Tunisian stitch. The last three. This is going to be my last row because I'm going to be ending the stream shortly. Once I'm done this last row, I'll show you how to finish off the edge. So now we're going to do, again, 3 chains, and then through the 3 loops, again, 3 chains, through the 3 loops, then through the 3 loops, cool. So now we're going, screwed that up, I think. So going through that, and now we're going to yarn over and bring it through all three. Okay. So to finish it off, you can see here at the outer edge, you got all these loops, these open chain spaces that are at the top. This part is the easiest part of this project, is to finish it off. So you're going to skip the very first stitch, and in the next stitch, in each of these, so each of these three here, first you're going to go in under the first bar. So this is in the shell. So the vertical parts of the shell go into the bar, yarn over, and bring it through both. So you're basically slip stitching. So then you're going to go into under the bar of the next one, yarn over, bring it through both. And then you do the third one of that shell. Go under that bar, yarn over, bring it through both. And you do that, you go to the next shell cluster, you go under the first bar of that shell, yarn over, bring it through both, go to the next one, go under, yarn over, bring it through both, and then the third one, go under, yarn over, and bring it through both. This is the easiest part, is the cast off. So go under the first one, yarn over, and slip stitch it, and you work your way across the fabric. There will be no return pass on this row because you're only gonna, it's like your regular crochet. You're just moving it all to the end. If I can, that stitch was a little on the tight side. Through, go under the next one. Again, these are the vertical bars that are forming that last row of shells, or mermaid scales, or whatever you want to call this. Slip stitching to the end. Yeah, I've seen 3D granny squares. They've got all different types of 3D granny squares. I don't know if I have the patience to do a 4-hour stream. Stop that. I don't think people want to hear me ramble for 4 hours. Wait a minute. You don't have enough on your plate in your house and you're lonely? I'm not doing a 4-hour stream tonight. Okay, I got to the end, and all you got to do is in that last turning chain, just go in, pick yarn over, and slip stitch it off. And that kind of makes a really even finished edge. It's just slip stitch. Again, the problem with Tunisian is it curls, like knitting curls. Well, depending on the stitch in knitting. So that's my sample that I made before, and it still curls, but over time you can get that curl out, and it's only on the ends. So that's the Tunisian ocean stitch. Again, makes a really dense fabric. I can see doing this if you have a chunkier Tunisian hook and a chunkier yarn, a well-wearing yarn, or multiple strands, and doing this to make like a really durable yarn to make like a bath mat or like a small little decorative area rug, but you would have to have durable yarn for that and a much bigger hook. Yeah, I don't think he wants the 2-year-old to be awake, and I don't think the other half will be happy either. This would be a very heavy mermaid costume. I mean, if you used like crochet cotton, but even then, the weight of that, I can kind of see, and I don't know how to, I don't really know how to increase and decrease this, which actually wouldn't be that difficult. I know a couple years ago there was this fad of making mermaid tail blankets for like that would only go up to like your knee or whatever, and it would be basically like a bag for your legs, but it will look like a mermaid tail. I can kind of see that with this, but I don't know how you would do the fin part. But you'd have to do a bunch of increasing and decreasing, which this is complicated enough. Yeah, the end of a towel. I can see this again, like I said, if you use like lightweight crochet cotton thread and do it like a decorative banding on a towel, like a hand towel or something. Just like a small strip of it. I mean, not a whole big piece of it, because it is a cool looking stitch. So that's the Tunisian ocean stitch. And again, to recap from before, the much easier or the sorcery involved of the iris stitch. This I can see as a blanket. This I can see in a bunch of other different things. Because it's much lighter weight, because it's full of air. It's not full of yarn. So I think we're going to end the stream. I'm getting tired. My throat's getting scratchy and sore. So we're going to go back over here. Thank you again for everybody who tuned in. Thanks for the I've got my okay, I have nothing planned for 2 more hours. And I'm tired of doing this ocean stitch. And I'm not getting out those knitting machines again because the last couple times I had it, I wasn't prepared and it was a disaster. Dance? Nobody wants to see me dance. Yeah, but again, I don't have anything else prepared. I don't have another um just regular like what? You just want to sit here and watch me do single crochet? I mean, I'm okay. I mean, I can stream a little longer, not for a total of 4 hours. Regular people crochet. Okay, you have a suggestion. Regular people crochet. Um, you do know that this is just an image. I don't really have. I don't have balls of yarn the size of my head. Well, almost. This I look like Scrooge McDuck swimming in the balls of yarn. mean, I don't know what I would stitch. I'm not doing the temperature blanket because I need content for next week. Um, I don't know. Okay, well, this is right here at hand. Okay, well, we're gonna go and do. Hold on, let me. Um, Here we go. This is what's at hand. This green that I've got miles and miles of. Oh yeah, yeah. Most of mine are too. Okay, you know what? Kind of like the other week when we did that horrible granny square. Regular crochet. The first person to tell me how many chains to do, that's how many chains I'll do. Oh, wait, wait. You want me to get that pink? Okay. This is the yarn they gave me, that she gave me. Okay. 221? Okay. I've never used this yarn, but I've used yarn that's similar to this. Okay. We got to get a bigger hook because an eye hook is too small for that. And I got to find something real quick just to look at the band. And yeah, okay, you know how I am with unprepared things at the end of my stream. Like, I know how to use the knitting machines, but if I haven't sat there and prepared at least an hour or two before streaming, then it doesn't work. Okay, this is calling for a size K hook. Let me get my hooks. Move the green. We're going to do this pink. That bad. That's a J. Gotta find my K hook. Oh, I'm running, having a mess. One of those. Looks like bread. What? Bread? That looks like bread? What type of pink bread do you eat? That's L. Here's a K. Okay. Yeah. Those are my wooden um double-ended crochet hooks, and my Tunisian hooks are in there. This looks like little models of bacteria that are all linked together. That's kind of what it looks like. Okay. I need to get my yarn ball because this is in a ball and not in a cake. Yeah, I guess they could look. And you're also probably on a phone. Yes, Pez on a string. Okay. So, this is the first time I'm working with this yarn in particular, but I have worked with yarn similar to this. So, we're going to make a slip knot. We're going to use a big old chunky hook. Actually, I might even go up to the L hook. And just do And I don't know how well this is going to work because I've never used this before. Ooh. I don't know if I like this. Okay. Oh, this is going to be a bitch. Okay. You know what? I have learned that when you use yarn like this, you might have to pair it with something. Because, yes, not city. So I'm going to take out these chains because I can already, I wouldn't be able to find where the chain goes in this. And I don't know if I might have a larger hook. So we are going to pair it up with this green. Yes, that's green. And this may or may not work. I'm using an L hook, and I do have larger hooks than this. They say to do this with a K? What are they talking about? You're going to make a large chain. Oh, I lost the loop already. Yeah, great idea. You care for the color combo. uh, that's what we got. This is a this is a pain. And I have worked with bulkier yarns like this before. So this isn't a new thing. I don't know how many chains I'm doing. That's just the chain alone. Okay. Well, okay, now I can see the chain because the green, pink at the top of the screen. What do you mean the pink at the top of the screen? Oh, you mean that pink? That's just an image. It's not like I can go and grab it. It's and I'm not going through every yarn I have. Okay. So I can kind of see the chain. Oh my god, okay. So we're doing single crochet with this. You're not getting anything fancy with this yarn. I mean, I can do it. I don't know if I like this yarn. I have a yarn wall, but it's on the other side. It's not behind me. I need a place for my bookshelves, so my bookshelves are actually behind me. Okay. I mean, at least the pink yarn is soft and fuzzy. It's not scratchy. All this is going to be a single crochet because if I do anything else, you're not even going to be able to see the stitch. Because usually these big, bulky novelty yarns, you're not going to be able to see the stitch. Okay, that's one row. And now, let me get another row and I'll show you what it looks like. Think you're going to have nightmares? I think I'm going to have nightmares. We thought Clean Miko was going to have nightmares with the ocean. Well, she left before I did the Tunisian ocean stitch. She was going to have nightmares with the iris stitch. A keychain. I don't think they're strong enough for a keychain. Okay, that is 2 rows of single crochet. And I'm sorry, that looks like something is infected. That looks like we have an infection. Okay, I'm going to do another row of single. Jabu Jabu belly? What the what is the Jabu Jabu belly? Okay, we're get to the end of this row. I am going to do a row of double. Oh, the only Zelda I played was the original Zelda on the original NES back in like the 80s. And I only played that a little bit. You said this looks better as I get more rows? Okay, we're going to do, we might do triple. Let's see if this works, but looks anything better when we do. You accept the tomatoes. Lost our minds. I don't know if we're going to go that far. It'd be astonishing. How about, you know what I should have done? I should have paired this pink with our good friend. It might cheer him up because pink's a bright cherry color. The rose. In purple, you're stunning. Okay. The other week, the beginning of the week was your wife, now you. Okay, so that's a couple rows of single, and then that's a row of double. It again, I know the color's probably throwing it off with the green, but I think this is ugly. I don't like this yarn. I mean, I'll still use it for something. I don't know what, but we'll find a use for it. Okay, let's do a triple. One, two, three. I'm not making a scrubby. Yes, I do. Well, some people wanted me to keep streaming and to come up with something on my own, and I like the. Wait a minute, that's turning into a double. And I like the interaction with the chat, so that's a good thing. But got a knot. It beeped up fugly. It takes forever to do one stitch. Yeah, I'm not doing no Tunisian crochet with this pink yarn. Oh, we do not mention that. At least this isn't as scary. doesn't like Karen either. Oh, yeah, from the other night. It is, and thank God we cannot play music while I'm streaming on Twitch. So, that's a good thing. Yeah, I would have not been able to do this with the K hook. I'm using the L. You know what? Actually, the green really does not. The green and the pink actually work. It kind of looks like a floral, like roses or something, with the green, like the leaves and all. But this is a weird yarn. Let me look at the banding. Let me see something real quick. Oh, this is actually for baby items. I can see that it being super soft. Okay. You know what, actually? So these are like 2 or 3 rows of single. There's a row of double, and then that's the triple. It's not as bad in the triple. I still am not a big fan of it. Like where it is a bat. You want me to make you a bath mat out of this? You want a pink bath mat? Set up that loop. I mean, it is very, very soft. Not for my bathroom. But yeah, it looks like something is infected. Or it kind of looks like little silkworm pods, like little. Well, get me some of this yarn in green or yellow. I don't like it. Let's tighten up that loop and let's do another row of triple. Start Newt. Who the heck is Newt? Oh wait a minute, that wasn't triple. Why am I Newt? I thought Norfair is the one that was had the rum kicking in. Welcome back. Cinderella called me Newt. And I said that you were the one that had the rum kicking in. Oh, I agree with you on that. Normally, it wouldn't take me this long to do a row of triples. It is much easier to do it with a another strand along with it. Ew. So that's 2 rows of triple. I mean, the stitches look a little better. It's still ugly. I've never tried those first two. I've tried the Bumbo XO and the Picaroon Gold. That one's pretty good. And actually, I got a couple other ones downstairs that are flavored. I think there's a coconut one. There's like 4 other ones on there that I haven't opened. You love this? If you love it, you're also the fan of that horrible Christmas yarn. You're retching at Myers. Oh, don't let Grammy hear you. Yeah. Okay, the lighting is different. It's much brighter there. I mean, oh, it kind of looks like raw ground beef that's got green crap in it. Cut all the silkworms apart for what? What am I going to do with these little tiny little silkworm? These little. You know, also they look like. Oh, I don't think anybody in here. Well, Norfairy might have seen it. Has anybody? Has anybody ever seen the John Waters film Serial Mom? Hot glue. Well, if you ever seen the movie Serial Mom, there's a line in the movie where she's making a prank call to her neighbor, and the line goes, "Pussy willows, Dottie, pussy willows." They kind of look like the little things on a pussy willow branch. Yes, I said that on my stream. Oh my god, I said that word. I'm gonna try frogging this out. That will take us some time on my stream. Sit here and watch me frog. She went to bed. Wait a minute. She can't moderate me. She has no power over me. Yeah, this you can't just pull and rip all the stitches out. You got to do each one. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to use this yarn for. I'm not. Why do you want me to cut them? What is your obsession with me cutting these little bumpy things off? Oh, wow. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Even if you could wake her up, let her let her sleep and real and relax. Yeah, this'll waste time sitting here frogging. Only the first row I'm doing. What I would make with this. I'm not a big fan of Pepto-Bismol pink anyway. Could match it with the sad green. Now, possibly not on my knitting machines, but possibly could use this. Um, okay, no, no fairy. Um, not on the Centro machines, but I probably would be able to use this pink yarn on the manual handheld knitting looms. What? We never had orange dime tap. We had grape. We had orange triminic. Yeah, I don't remember orange dime tap. They had orange triminic. That reminds me, that's what this is. This color is the color of liquid amoxicillin. I know it looked like bacteria. Yeah, this is the color of liquid amoxicillin. Whose idea was it to use this yarn? Find it. A rope? No, 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 no. This, I could see it'd be easier to use this with another yarn in the handheld knitting loom to make a hat or a flat panel. The one where I have to take the thing and do each stitch by hand, not the crank one. It won't work on the crank one because its yarn is too big and bulky. It'll get caught in the machine. No, no, no. It's too big for that little handheld um, knitted rope thing. No, it won't work on that. It probably won't even go into the hole in that. Yeah, the knitting knobby. Even though that's not really a knitting knobby is something different. A knitting knobby is a tool that you use when you are spinning yarn to get the yarn. Yeah, that type of process. I have one. It's actually made out of PVC pipe. They have wooden ones and fancy ones, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. Yeah, I don't. Maybe it was called the knitting knobby before, but I don't know what they call it now. It's I think some people call it I cord. I could be wrong. To make I cord, but yeah, it's knitted, but it makes a rope. It's only got the four pegs at the top. I've got a couple of them. Yeah, but I think this pink yarn is too big. Oh, a rectangular one? I've got a purple. It's a rectangular thing with multiple pegs, and that's to do like a double knit um scarf type thing. There's other things you can do on it too. Yeah, I've got one of those. I've got the four round, the Nifty Knitter round knitting looms, handheld manual looms. Almost done frogging, but I don't think this yarn is gonna fit. I'll grow and grab the those little handheld things. I don't think it's gonna work in those little ones to make the rope. Yarn's too bulky. Yep, yep. The elastic knitted. Well, they weren't elastic. They were knitted little loops to make the pot holders. Yeah, it had little pegs on all four sides, and you put them across, and then you took the other one and you wove them through. Yep, they still make those things. I'm not demonstrating those on stream. Okay. Now I gotta take all of this yarn apart, separate it, so it doesn't get really knotted up, even though I'm probably gonna have some knots, which I think I already have. Okay, the green is done. Now I'm gonna. Oh, I won't. I've gotten good at untangling yarn. If I change my stream to PG friendly and we could have Sunday school, God's eyes are boring. They're super easy and boring. I mean, that's a change from that Tunisian stitch I showed tonight. Okay. I know what we're going to do. Because I have got a mess here on this ball of yarn. I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera. I'm going to cake pink silkworm god eyes. Okay. I'm going to cake my yarn. That will take up some time too. I'm what? I'm carrying. No, no, no. I'm caking the green yarn, not the silk, not the pink yarn. No. I was just the cake was getting all unruly with all the yarn coming out of the middle. Getting full, but I can get a little more on there. I gotta move the yarn guide. There are 4 of you watching. I don't know who else is in here because I can't click on the thing. Well, I can right click. Users in chat. Oh, there's other. That's weird. It's showing 4, but there might be more in here. It's weird how it tells me who's currently in the chat room. Okay. Now I need to tuck the tail in. It's good. Put my yarn label I don't know how it shows on mobile, but on desktop, it will say a little, there'll be a little red, under the video on desktop, it'll give a little red icon, a person icon, and a number. But on my end, the streamer's end, it shows differently. It's a different screen that I have that no one else can see. Okay, so that was fun. So you want me? I'm not going to do the whole thing like this. That is a. I need sharper snips. So you want me to clip the little. No, I am not clipping off. Well, I'm probably going to be ending here soon. I'm not doing 4 hours. No, we're not saving those little silkworms made out of polyester, whatever it's made out of. We're going to get Riley's hot dog rolls again that he thought that I had in my bag. I think that's it for tonight. We've had enough fun and games. So, everybody, thank you for tuning in and following. And DJ was in here earlier. I don't know if they're still here, but thank you for the follow. And again, the streams we uploaded onto YouTube that you can watch anytime that you want. Saturday, I'm going to do that basic Tunisian technique for wide. Not tomorrow. Not streaming tomorrow. Saturday. I'll do the technique for the wider Tunisian simple stitch. So, everybody have a good night and happy crafting.